We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Welcome to the December 16, 2024 work session of the Shawnee County Board of County Commissioners. My name is Kevin Cook. I serve as the chair this year. Joining me today is Commissioner Aaron Mays. Good morning.
Morning.
Commissioner Bill Rippon. Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Eckert, our county councilor, is at the end.
Good morning.
And we have a presentation this morning. Amanda, I believe that you're first up for a presentation for fundraising.
Yes, my name is Amanda Monholland, Commission Office. I am here today to present a check for the United Way workforce campaign that we held. We are at for a grand total of $5,939. And I have representatives here from United Way, Angel and Jenna. And I think, Angel, you were going to come up and maybe say a few words? Okay.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
This is always an exciting day to get to celebrate what Shawnee County employees are investing back into their community. So we could not be more thankful, first to Amanda, for all of her help, because of course running a workplace campaign is a lot of work on top of her actual job that I know she does as well and does a great job of. So we're super grateful to Amanda and to all the folks here who helped run the campaign and make it happen. These dollars really come at a time that's so important in our community. As you all know very well, families are feeling the pinch and feeling the stress of things more than ever these days, whether it's the cost of groceries, which we've seen increased by about 50% over the last 5 years. Rather, it's the cost of things like healthcare, the cost of things like housing, all those challenges that we know families are facing. And we're really fortunate at United Way that we get to work with partners across Shawnee County to really bring people together and take on what are some of our toughest challenges that we face in our community today. And their challenges are so big that no one organization can do them alone. And so we're really fortunate that we get to work with dozens of partners to be able to take the dollars that employees here have invested along with employees throughout Shawnee County and put those dollars to use looking at long-term solutions for those challenges in our community. We know we can't fix poverty overnight, we can't fix hunger overnight, but the challenges, the solutions that we get to work on with folks look at those long-term solutions, and that's what these dollars get to address. So we are so excited to continue doing that work with your help and always appreciate your partnership and your leadership in that effort as well, so that you all, I know, of course, have important policy work that you do, and these dollars get to work alongside that. So we so appreciate all of your continued support.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you for everything that United Way does in the community. Commissioner Rippon, anything?
I just appreciate everything that your organization does.
Commissioner
It's
Mays?
great. Thank you.
Yeah. Amanda, you want to do a photo op?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
This is our third fundraiser report, third check presentation.
you guys got pretty good at this. There we go. All right. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you. Thank you so much. Thanks so much. You too. It's good to see you.
See you again.
I won't take you today. Thanks again.
As I noted, I just want to thank Amanda and Stephanie and everybody with the fundraising committee. This is the third fundraising report that we've done this month. We had a presentation to Helping Hands Humane Shelter, and then a presentation to Project Topeka, and then today with United Way. So our employees have been very, very generous in donating and giving back to the community. Our,
Do we have a total? Do we have a total?
of all three?
I could get that for
Okay.
you.
Yep. Amanda, I'm sure we'll be working on that. We expect that by the end of the meeting. So our second presentation today, we have a presentation on the Jayhawk Theater, and Joanne Morell, I'm going to turn it over to you. Come on up. Morning.
And like magic. Okay. the slides do not match what I'm saying. They're just running in the background for your entertainment value. So, good morning. We're pleased to be here and present a quick update of our progress, and personally thank you for your commitment and investment. The PEC allows us to maximize every dollar raised, and for Phase 1 construction alone, it will have saved more than $325,000. So we really appreciate your support on that. As you know, we have an incredible team working hard, and the reason we have a substantive update to share is because of our team, and we have Vance Kelly with Trainer Architects and our board president, Jeff Carson. I want to make sure you know they're here because you know I'm going to punt to them for the hard questions. So we know you're super busy, and this is a busy time of year, so I know several of you have the opportunity to be there and see the progress firsthand. In your packets, we have a few pictures, and really appreciate your time. And I don't know that people really understand the commitment that you personally make, and it's not just these meetings, but it's the committee meetings and all the behind the scenes and all the events that you attend. So thank you for your service to our community and your leadership. So we're proud to, quick update, things are moving fast. We have monumental progress each week, so even though you've been there recently, it's gonna look very different. And they're spending about $1 million a quarter. So it's moving fast. And we're proud to report that all of our Department of Commerce Sprint grant funds will be allocated by March of 2025, ahead of the deadline. And you have a detailed budget. It's a lot of numbers. Please appreciate that the master budget that the Cine team put together is 500 lines, so we consolidated that into less than 50 for you. And our goal is to keep continual construction and to reopen in 2026, the year the Jayhawk Theater celebrates its 100th anniversary. And this is a huge undertaking. So, and as many of you have seen, it's, all the original infrastructure is there. And when they went to test it, it did not meet code. So it's an expensive project, but it's essential. So the accessibility, life safety, structural, MEP upgrades, that totals more than $15 million alone. And that is the first aspect that we are tackling to make sure that the building is secure and safe and the foundation is solid so that this historic treasure can last another 100 years. So the Sprint funding from the state is helping to complete the most essential infrastructure needs. That includes the foundation restoration, masonry, waterproofing, and the critical required life safety infrastructure. So it's laying both figuratively and literally a solid foundation for the next 100 years. Once restored, we will quadruple our seating capacity, which is an extraordinary return on investment for Shawnee County and the state, and catalytic impact for downtown Topeka. We can draw bigger and better acts, host events 3 to 4 nights a week, and bring out-of-town guests to our community on a regular basis. And as you know, what downtown's experience with a vibrant historic theater is more than significant. And Salina is a perfect example. We want that for our capital city. And each year that passes, Topeka misses out. The Jayhawk Theater sits in the heart of Topeka's most dire opportunity zone with staggering statistics. As an example, in this zone alone, 65% of individuals are living below the 200% federal poverty guidelines. 65% of individuals are living, and they also fall in the 95th percentile for low life expectancy. So this area remains a critical area of need, and when we look at catalytic change and substantive impact, the heart of downtown Topeka is still a great place to invest. While progress continues at an amazing rate, and we hope that pace will continue, and what we're looking to do is make this happen, and we're really thrilled to be on the cusp of a restored State Theater of Kansas. So there's a few stats and details that I know questions have come up, and so I want to highlight those for you. efforts led by the Reverend Richard Taylor began in the 1990s to save the Jayhawk. And at that time, the concern was, does Topeka even need another performing arts venue? So we looked at that closely, and that was the first place that we started. And there's amazing performing arts venues in Topeka. So they have a wide range of seating capacity as well. Stormont Vale Event Center has just over 6,800 fixed, 8,300 standing, and we're working closely with these venues. We're excited to partner with them, and they have been great advocates for us because they understand the value of continuing to build a vibrant arts culture. Evergy Plaza has 3,500 on the plaza. We can double that or more when we block off the streets. Topeka Performing Arts Center has just under 2,500 seats, and Topeka Civic Theater has 280, 150, 110, so 540 total from its 3 stages. So a flexible mid-sized venue in the 825 seated to 1,200 standing range, which is what the Jayhawk will be, is truly missing from our capital city and fills this distinct niche. And we love Sean Dixon's analogy. So he talks about we have the cruise liner and we have the ocean liner and the cruise ship, and those are great venues for big productions, and it's a big deal to bring in those acts and takes a lot of time in the planning. He says what we need now is the speedboat. And that is one of the niche benefits that historic theaters can bring. We're smaller, we can move fast, we have fewer seats to fill, there's less risk, and we can book acts midweek, and we can take advantage of being on the interstate and pulling groups through as they are routing from Denver and St. Louis and Tulsa. And we have had some great examples of this. So like Billy Bob Thornton on a Monday night, sold out. William Lee Martin's Comedy Stampede was a Wednesday night, sold out. And 55% of the patrons came from across Kansas and out of state. 86% were first-time visitors to the Jayhawk and Topeka. So these national artists have their own following, and they bring their own fans who seek them out. And one of the biggest complaints we only had 300 seats, and so we had so many people coming from out of town that by the time people heard about it, we were sold out. So we look forward to the day, hopefully soon, when that changes. In terms of tourism, because what we received from the state was a tourism grant, and we demonstrated the catalytic impact that we would have in being reopened. So out of the gate, we're looking at $1 million to almost $5 million in tourism dollars. And I don't know if that sounds like a lot or not, but we're trying to be really conservative when we look at these numbers and comparable to other historic theaters. So we were seeing 30 to 40% from outside of the community, out of state, and 30% is the average of historic theaters. So we look forward to continuing to have those same statistics. We're not only serving the community, but regularly bringing people in to Topeka. So I think that one of the things that is sometimes kind of overlooked is and there are always big numbers, and Sean doesn't like it when I scale back the multiplier. And when you look at the detail that goes into that, you can understand truly how that happens and the magnitude of that multiplier. And if we bring in, fully scaled, we'll be bringing in 100 big acts a year, even if we start with 50 or even if we start with 35. That's $1 million that's coming to downtown Topeka. And because of the out-of-town split, it's roughly 50-50. So say that's 500,000 locally where we're bringing our folks here, and then 500,000 coming for out-of-state. And that's when we're open out of the gate. So otherwise, that's our $500,000 going to another community and $500,000 we don't get. And our friends 30, 60, 100 miles down the road, they'd love for us to stay closed. They'd much rather have everybody coming to their community. But I think it's time for us to have that here in Topeka. So arts and culture, just one more thing on tourism. So arts and culture, $867 billion industry, 4.2% GDP, and 4.6 million jobs. And 62% of that spending, which is $166 billion in spending, but over 60% comes from the audience. So not only as a venue are we contributing to the economic growth and all the people that we employ and all the sales tax revenue we're generating and encouraging people to move here because there's so many great things to do in Shawnee County that they want to live here. So all of those things go into it, but 60% of that revenue comes from the audiences who spend money while they're here. And the breakdown, even though these numbers seem big, when you look at the breakdown, it does make sense. So for the average is $31 above the ticket price. So that's like $16 in meals, $5 in souvenirs and gifts, $4.50 in lodging. So they have the breakdown of this, and you see what goes into that. So it's significant, and the out-of-town folks spend more because they're lodging and all of that stuff. Okay, so this is huge, and I know we'll open it up for questions. And it's an important time. We're on the cusp of getting this done, under construction, and being closed is brutal. It's nice to be missed, but being closed is hard on our downtown businesses, and our goal is to get open as soon as possible and maintain that continued construction schedule. So we're working hard to bring this project to fruition, and we are leaving no stone unturned from federal grant opportunities, with another one submitted Friday at midnight and with 1 minute to spare. We look forward to continually working with our partners and making this happen. So accessibility, life safety, HVAC, plumbing, mechanical, those are important. They're expensive. They're not sexy, but they're key to keeping a vibrant historic asset here for the next 100 years. As I've said before, one advantage of being 3 decades behind the curve is that we can look at other comparable communities, and we've done that a lot. We have a lot of research, and we continue to tighten our operating pro formas and make sure that we bring the best of the best to Topeka, and that it's well planned. And as you know, we have like one of the most amazing historic architects on our team, and we are grateful for their time and dedication and all they put into this, and really coming up with creative solutions. It's a challenging problem, or it's a challenge, and there have been problems in excavating the foundation restoration. You know, that alone, the foundation restoration and waterproofing was over $1 million alone. So we know that the most successful projects have robust public-private partnerships. And what we need and what we're asking is for the city and county to work together to match the state's commitment of $5 million. This will keep our construction in full motion and enable us to maximize and leverage other funding opportunities. So when we open our historic theater, it's a shining example and a source of pride, not only for Topeka and Shawnee County, but the entire state. Thank you for the opportunity to update you. Happy to
So,
answer your
Joanne,
questions.
in different fundraising projects that you've taken on, you were one of the main fundraiser drivers for the Children's Discovery Center, starting that out, which has just been a jewel for our community, and then fundraising for the Evel Knievel Museum, which was a great addition and added a lot of vibrancy to the community, and now Jayhawk Theater, which is, I mean, this has probably got to be the most daunting of the projects of the 2 that I've mentioned, because it seems like, you know, as a transplant Topekan, we've heard restoration of the Jayhawk Theater, I think, really since the moment I arrived in Topeka in 1993. And so we have 30 years of people talking about restoration of the Jayhawk Theater. And I know that we're finally seeing some progress being made. I can see the wheels are really turning now, which is really giving hope to the project. But in 2019, JADO did a quality of life grant for some bathrooms, and those projects did come to fruition where we were able to get those bathrooms up and running, right?
Correct. The Jayhawk Theater, Jeff submitted a letter, I believe.
Yep.
And that was a request for, I think, $90,000, and then $53,000 was funded for the sewer line, which is huge because we now have a sewer line that goes out of Jackson Street into the middle of the street, and it's a 100-year sewer line. Yeah,
So that was a big part of it.
that was huge, yep.
And,
Because you can't have events without bathrooms.
Right. And
So-
then you got awarded the $5 million from the state for the Sprint grant.
Yes.
And then we had a JADO meeting last week where Deputy Mayor, Councilwoman Christina Valdivia Alcala talked about that if the state and the city, or the city and the county didn't come up with a match, potentially there was dollars that would be lost by Jayhawk. I guess kind of where are we at in the grand scheme of things?
Well, we have a plan, and the contractor and architect team are working hard to put together packages so that as additional funding is secured, then we can pull the trigger on that construction. We're not going to spend any money that we don't have, and we have a phased plan so that we can, really maximize the greatest needs and hopefully get the theater open as soon as possible.
Okay. So you have the $5 million from the state. If the city and the county came up with $5 million, where would that money be going to?
Great. So the remaining critical infrastructure totals right at 11.5 million. And with the other funding secured and projected, that leaves a balance of about $5 million. So that is going to the structural, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, the core infrastructure needs, and accessibility. That's one of the challenges that historic theaters face, is figuring out how to make it accessible, and they weren't built with elevators 100 years ago. So Vance's team has come up with some brilliant solutions, and it's expensive. That alone is over $1 million. And we think it's important. That allows us not to have a lift in the historic Jayhawk Walk, but then still get people up onto the main level to access the upper seating, and then the lower level as well. So we think that's important, and that's a big price tag. So we'd love for your help in funding some of those really critical bathrooms, plumbing, electricity. They're taking apart the ducts, and they said they've never seen so many pipes, and they're covered with asbestos. So there's abatement and demo safe that has been taking place consistently. So it's a lot.
Commissioner Rippon?
What was the year of that funding that you got?
Right, the JADO, I think the request went in 2018, and then the work was completed in 2019.
And that was 50,000, 54, 53,
Yep,
and that was for the sewer line extension.
correct. Out of the gallery facing Jackson Street.
Commissioner Mays? Thoughts, questions?
So I'm looking at the budget here that you gave us, and I'm curious, what is, and this could just be that I don't know, AE fees and specialty consultants. What does that
yeah.
mean? What is AE?
Sorry, architectural and engineering.
Okay.
And specialty consultants. So, yes.
So, I mean, I'm looking between that and then the closing and legal and title, and then also the contractor fees and bonds and everything. I mean, out of this initial phase, a lot of it's going to non-actual, like, construction, and so.
Well, it's 3.8 million, I believe, and I see that number is not pulled out. So,
It was on the second page, or is that what you're talking about? The architect and engineering?
Yeah, so, just a second, let me reference an earlier, more line items to tell you that exactly. I have too many numbers and too many budgets. Okay, So of the initial 5 million, 3.493 has gone to, is going to interior and exterior restoration and critical infrastructure.
Okay.
And then there's another 220,000 that's left in contingency. So it'll probably be close to 3.7 that's gone directly to the infrastructure. And thank you for pointing that out, because this is, you all are the first to see this, and we continue to tighten. It's not a static document. As soon as we get updated numbers, we continue to refine that. So I'll make sure that's clearer.
So after the phase one is, let's say, complete, and, you know, the alleyway is no longer flooding the basement when it rains and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens to the building at that point? I mean, do you go back to operating in the way that you were operating 6 months ago or a year ago? Or are we just at a standstill?
We have significant infrastructure needs to get it operational, and the next $5 million commitment would help ensure that that key infrastructure is in place. So we cannot go back to operating as we were
Okay.
at that point. But the goal is to do that as soon as possible.
After this first phase, though, you said you'd be able to raise your occupancy, or is that after the second?
That, well, it's,
Or is it?
we're trying to maximize and do what makes the most sense for the construction and to keep that in motion so that when we do open, it's complete. So we don't know exactly when we could be open, but we need the funding to keep. And the other thing to keep in mind is that if, you know, our goal is to be open in 2026. So that means next year in 2025, we need to be booking artists. Well, we need an end date and we need to know when we open in order to do that. So it's, you know, much like you heard on last week about the chicken and the egg and keeping it all moving forward.
Just trying to think through everything that we've got going. So state funding, local funding, state funding, maybe some federal funding, and then you get your private funding to get to your ultimate goal.
Yes.
Okay. Well, commissioners?
You had mentioned that JADO had, back in, what year was that? 18?
Yes.
2018? Was that from their tourism end of their funding, or was that more of the economic development or
That was actually part of our use of carryover funds.
carryover funds?
We had used some carryover funds for quality of life, and which we did, and Molly Howie touched on it briefly at the JADO meeting. There was the Jayhawk Theater, Evergy Plaza, Red Bud Park in North Topeka, and
No, a park in Auburn.
thank you, the
Yeah.
Auburn Park. I knew I was missing one, but there were 4 quality of life projects that were selected. A big chunk of it did go to Evergy Plaza to help get that jump-started or get that seen through to fruition.
And I want to add, Molly was, and Jeff can speak more to it, but very, very helpful and supportive. And, you know, from the beginning, we know it's important for the theater to fit into the bigger picture. And so we have done everything that has been asked of us. We will continue to do that. And we appreciate every dollar raised helps us make progress and then maximize and leverage additional funding. So it all adds up, and we are grateful for every dollar received.
Now, Is this something that you would need all at once, or do you need it phased in over time?
Phased in over time would be fine. We do, the construction bills are expensive, so as much of that could be front-loaded would be great.
And then when you talk about the funding, if you had commitment for funding, or that you knew that the funding was secured, you would be able to start working on different projects.
Correct. That opens a whole other opportunity with the private funding and additional grant funding that triggers all of those next conversations.
So it's not necessarily that you need $5 million check today. Look at Jennifer and have her, get you one out by this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I have a question. You've got in here, in this budget, $5 million estimated of historic preservation tax credits. How does that work? It seems pretty
Those-
high, but
Those come on at the end, and so that is, we're working with the state, and it's based on a percentage of the qualified expenses. So that's our estimate at this point.
okay.
Okay. Gives us some things to look at and things to take up. I think working with the city. And then when you met with them, did they express any commitment towards or an idea of what they were looking at? Or were they just taking it into consideration as well?
They are extremely supportive, and as I think you know, we also received some transient guest tax funds that has been essential in keeping everything moving forward as well. So the support is there, and I think that we asked them the same thing. And again, we want it to fit into the bigger picture. And so whatever you guys think is best as the next step, we're happy to do that.
Okay, all right. Appreciate it. Commissioner Kwan?
I have questions for Vance.
I'm glad you called him up and I didn't have to.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Could you kind of give us a little bit of a walkthrough what has all been done with the infrastructure?
Yeah, you do have to remember that we are working with a building that was partially occupied, right? So while the theater was operating, it had a lot of temporary components to allow a reduced occupancy in order to get people in there in order to show them. So Commissioner, what we've been able to do with this first funding for infrastructure is dealing with structural issues, water issues, and when Joanne mentioned that it was a real challenge, it was a real challenge because we're dealing with a building that has an alley that allows water to run to the building and in the building. And you would think, well, simply excavate and waterproof. Infrastructure in downtowns means we're dealing not only with city services in that alley, but private. So we have high voltage electrical running through there. We have telecom running through there. So when you excavate and do that type of work, you can't bring in a large backhoe and just start excavating up against your building in order to waterproof. There's a lot of hand digging, there's a lot of shoring that goes on. So it's been a challenge in order to have that work proceed. But it is proceeding. So Senny and Company is the construction manager. They've managed it well. We're underway. As we dig down, we take care of the masonry so that the wall is solid and doing the waterproofing. We're coming out, once we finish the waterproofing, we'll be doing masonry restoration, both outside along that same alley wall as well as inside to make sure we have the structure the way that we need. So there's a lot of infrastructure right now is what we have the needs for in order to be able to take that next step to finish the HVAC, the heating and air conditioning. That's the next infrastructure that needs to be done. Joanne mentioned ADA. Until we can get accessibility within the theater, we're limiting. We're not allowing the public to use it the way it should. So Commissioner, all of these infrastructure things that are not a high priority to private donors is where we're really looking for public participation to help us take those steps that are needed.
Last time I was in there, they were punching a hole, looked like in a wall there. Is that to expand into that mixed room, or?
So what you saw was, as we're working with the theater proper, we also have behind-the-scenes spaces that are backstage. And of course, as we try to look at how we're going to do fire protection systems, HVAC, we need to penetrate those walls. So that was the first step in trying to make sure that we can connect the two buildings.
What about the electrical in the building? Does it all just need to be gutted and start over?
Yes, we've spent a lot of time working with the utility company. We know that the systems that we have, not only serving the theater itself, but the Commonwealth condominium building, even the Jayhawk Tower, those services coming off that alley are antiquated. And so we have to look at new electrical service in order to serve not only the theater, but the adjacent buildings as well.
I guess I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh, yeah, I guess, you mentioned ADA. Because it's a historic building, does it have to be built to modern standards, or are there exceptions that can be made to some of that?
There are not what I would call exceptions or variances from ADA or the building codes or life safety codes, but when we look at solving those issues or developing solutions that create accessibility, oftentimes it is handled differently than if I were to build a brand new building from ground up. So there's more challenges involved with an historic building and making it work. But we have a plan. We've been able to look at solutions that not only provide early and immediate accessibility, but as the project is phased, as dollars become available, we have the solutions in the master plan that we've developed that can make the facility accessible, all the spaces that we're talking about occupying.
In that main theater area, it appears the floor is terraced, correct?
Correct,
And then
yes.
on one side, you use some steps, and the other side ramps, is that?
Yes, so what you're looking at is the master plan for the document. When you look at the slope, Commissioner, of the existing floor, it of course exceeds ADA. And so as we look at a tiered floor system, which is actually going to provide the most flexibility for the most use of the theater through the week and weekends, as we develop a tiered floor, we look at accessibility. But the ramps that you're going to see on that one side are to help move tables, chairs, and furniture, and they are not accessible, but we have access from the Jayhawk Walk to in front of the stage, and up on top to the next tier. We have accessibility that as you come through the original theater doors off the Jayhawk Walk, that tier is accessible. So 3 out of the 4 tiers, those with disabilities will be able to utilize the main floor.
I was in the Emporius Theater that they restored.
Renata?
And I noticed they had the tiered floor, and it worked out very well, because the event I was there for, they had tables set up.
Exactly.
Which you couldn't do on just a slope floor.
Yeah, when you talk about different types of venues and the activities that we can have and how it fits that niche within our community, it shows the versatility of the space.
This theater, it doesn't have a backstage, but it looks like there'll be a back curtain. Is that kind of the plan?
Yeah, so we've, of course, the Jayhawk Theater does own what was called the gallery before, which is on the back side of the stage. And because of removing a non-historic mezzanine that was behind that gallery space, we're now able to extend the back of Stage House to have the road boxes and the storage that's necessary at stage level. So before, we weren't going to be able to do that with that mezzanine in place. And that's one of the infrastructure changes that we're having to do, is remove non-historic components that really limited how the theater was able to function before.
George Burns would be thrilled with this setup. He wrote a letter, I don't know if you've heard this story.
No.
Somebody, well, when he was still alive, somebody sent him a letter asking about his experience going to the Jayhawk. And he wrote a nice letter back and said he loved it and he hated it. He said what he loved about it was one of the few air-conditioned theaters that vaudeville would ever experience. And but he said what he didn't like is there was no backstage, and he had an act with his brother where he went off one side of the stage, but he had to come in on the other. This meant he went through the alley. He
Yes.
said there was always something creepy back there in the alley, that he had somebody or something, you know, so.
Well, we've been able to solve that solution with our plan, yes, sir.
Very good. All right.
Commissioner Reyes?
No, I don't have anything
I
else.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and we'll be, I know, taking this up in consideration and how we can help the Jayhawk Theater, and I want to make sure that you understand that I believe that the commissioners are very supportive of the Jayhawk Theater and making sure that we find the right path to having this restored.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. That draws us to our next item, which is public comment. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment? Seeing none, that draws us to administrative communication. Is there any member of the county that wishes to address this? Amanda?
Morning, Commissioners. Amanda. I did get those numbers for you, and I got a breakdown from Helping Hands Humane Society. We raised $6,706. Project Topeka was $3,134.70, and then today's was $5,939 with United Way, for a grand total of $15,779.70.
Great,
That's fantastic.
Good.
Thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other business to come before the commission?
Commissioners, I have one thought during that.
Yes.
There was some texting going on because someone brought up the transient guest tax, Jennifer did, and we don't get a lot of money off that because I think we only have one hotel.
Yeah, 50,000 a year, basically.
However, you can apply that tax to Airbnbs and Verbos. And I know that right now, I believe our planning department takes the position that those cannot exist in Shawnee County. But maybe there's a reason we should come back around to that. If we were interested in juicing up our transient guest tax, that would be one way to do it.
Interesting concept to think about, and maybe have the planning department and audit finance to look into, and also legal, because it's going to touch on a lot of different things.
I just looked into it. I'm done.
All right.
No, we're also right now looking at our transient guest tax resolution to see if the definition would fit that accommodation.
Okay.
Good. All right. Well, with nothing else to come before us, we are adjourned until Thursday.